Good evening. It's good to have you join us. This is the news at 7 on NT International. I'm Ruth Aguele. Let's bring you the headlines now. United States Congress certifies Joe Biden's victory as 45th democratically elected president. President Buhari pledges to adopt more treaties to improve the well-being of persons with disabilities. Plus, as infections rise, medical experts advise Nigerians to protect themselves from more deadly mutated form of COVID-19. All right, let's start from the global scene. U.S. Congress has affirmed Joe Biden's election victory after pro-Trump protesters stormed the U.S. Capitol, wreaking havoc. Joyce Ometu, who has been monitoring the situation, reports that President Trump has now committed to an orderly transition on 20th January.
Proceedings resumed at about 8 p.m. with Vice President Mike Pence bringing the Senate session back into order after a chaotic day of protests and violence which earlier halted the joint session of U.S. Congress for several hours. Despite the events, the U.S. Congress affirmed Joe Biden as the next president of the United States after the certified 270 Electoral College votes.
Joseph R. Biden, Jr. of the state of Delaware has received 306 votes. Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida has received 232 votes.
Following these events, Donald Trump has committed to a peaceful transition of power. Mr. Trump announced he totally disagreed with the outcome of the election, but confirmed that there will be an ordinary transition on January 20th, 2021. Meanwhile, Facebook and Instagram have blocked President Trump's account until after peaceful transition of power. In the meantime, Americans and some world leaders have reacted to the demonstrations which claimed the lives of 4 people and led to a 6 p.m. citywide curfew in the capital. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson condemned the attack, saying the United States stands for democracy around the world and it is now vital that there should be a peaceful and orderly transfer of power. Former President Barack Obama declared that violence was incited by a sitting president and says Capitol riots will be remembered as a moment of shame for the nation. In France, Emmanuel Macron has also condemned the attacks, saying what happened is not America. From New Zealand, Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern tweeted that democracy should never be undone by a mob. Police said 2 pipe bombs were found near the Democrat and Republican Party headquarters and firearms recovered, while about 52 people have so far been arrested. People describe the events as a dark day for American democracy. Joyce Ometu, NTA News.
All right, let's expand the discourse, and joining us now via Zoom to speak more on political developments in the United States is Ambassador Joe Keshi. He's the former Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and also served as Consul General in Atlanta, USA. Always glad to have you join us. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, now we saw the violence that erupted through the Capitol on Wednesday by pro-Trump rioters after President Donald Trump repeated his claims of election fraud. Now, what's your reaction to this happening in a developed country, you say, like the U.S.?
I think it's more appropriate to use one word that Donald Trump himself liked to use on occasions like this: disgraceful. Simply disgraceful. Nobody would have imagined that, in our lifetime, that this would happen in the United States of America. The shining city on the hill, according to President Reagan. The country that has gone around the world promoting democracy and the bastion of democracy in the world. And it's just unfortunate, and you can see the statement from other world leaders describing the whole situation as unfortunate, simply because one man wants to hold on to power and he was prepared to sacrifice and destroy the United States of America.
Okay, now the U.S. Congress, we saw, has also brought the matter to rest with its certification of Joe Biden's victory as the 45th democratically elected president of the United States. What are your thoughts at this time to Americans moving forward?
Well, I think after 4 years of the destructive rule of Donald Trump, America needed a new leader, a very sane leader, a very knowledgeable leader, a very calm leader that certainly I'm confident enough, given his background and history, that he will put in place, he will restore the honor of the United States of America. He will strengthen the institutions of the United States. And I think he will be more engaging, with the rest of the world than Donald Trump was. I'm just using was now because as far as most of us are concerned, yesterday for me was the end of the rule of Donald Trump. I think he's now isolated, completely isolated, and there's nothing else I think he can do between now and the next 10 or 15 days. But we need to be hopeful that Joe Biden will do his best to restore America's credibility.
Indeed. But let's bring it back home now. Going by the number of people who died within the spate of the crisis and the number of arrests we saw happen, would you say the protest was well managed compared to how the NSAS protest was managed in Nigeria?
Well, there are two different things.
Okay.
I mean, there are two different situations. The NSAS process was a peaceful protest that, that was badly, managed by the authorities of this country. Let's be very clear about that. On the other hand, this one was not a peaceful protest, but at the same time, they overwhelmed the Capitol Police. You have to understand that this is not the Washington Police. This is the capital itself. The Congress has a police of its own. It's not a large police force. It's a just small force that maintains peace around the capital itself. So the crowd overwhelmed it. But what is interesting, and then given your question, and I think Nigerians and particularly the leadership of the police force should understand it. What is interesting was when eventually the police came in, you could see how systematically they pushed back the protesters from the capital. There was no violence when they were doing it, but they were very professional. There was no all this kind of beating of everybody all over the place. They just went up to and then gradually, systematically, they began to push the people out of the capital. And that's something we need to learn. I have spoken on your program before, and I talked of the inability of the Nigerian police to manage demonstration. We've been demonstrating in this country even since my days when I was in the university. Okay. And how many years ago? Since then, the Nigerian police is yet to learn or to find a way to manage demonstration properly. Okay,
Ambassador Keshi, since we're talking about lessons to be learned, what would you say other nations around the world can learn from this whole scenario?
Well, look, the most important thing I think we need to learn is that we need to conduct our elections very well, credibly, so that no matter what happens, no matter the dispute, we can confidently say, as is being said about the last election in the United States, that there was no evidence of fraud. And that's something you cannot say of a number of African countries. So that's the first thing. And that starts when you have very credible leaders as electoral officers, when you have very strong institutions who are ready to challenge the authorities who want them to cheat. These are some of the things that we need to, learn. The other thing is that when you bring a good leader, a very good leader, a compassionate leader, a knowledgeable leader, I believe that people will follow that leader, without the kind of rancor that we normally have in the continent.
All right. Thank you very much, Ambassador Joe Keshi, for your contribution. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, let's look at all the pressing issues arising back home. President Muhammadu Buhari has described as promise fulfilled the formal takeoff of the National Commission for Persons with Disabilities aimed at protecting the rights and dignity of people with special needs in the country. Granting audience to the chairman and members of the commission, the president promised that under his watch, government will continue to give effect to all treaties that seeks to improve the lives of disadvantaged Nigerians. Let's get the details now from State House correspondent Adam Sambo.
The chairman and members of the National Disability Commission were led to the State House by the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, Sadia Umar Farouk.
A patriotic and responsible leadership is that which focuses on a more dignified way of improving the lives of the less privileged. Accordingly, Your Excellency, your administration shall remain indelible in the hearts of persons with disabilities.
This sense of belonging being enjoyed by persons with disabilities in Nigeria is a pre-election promise delivered by President Muhammadu Buhari. The minister is, however, worried that over 95% of the nation's public buildings are not accessible to persons with disabilities.
There's also a high need for proactive measures to curtail the negative attitude towards persons with disabilities by creating mass awareness, eliminating discriminations in all forms, and improving their livelihood.
President Muhammadu Buhari said with Nigeria as a signatory and state party to the relevant United Nations Convention, nothing will be left to chance towards promoting the inclusion of persons with special needs in all development efforts.
The government is not unaware of the huge population of persons with special needs in Nigeria, estimated at over 25 million. The task before you is enormous. You must work diligently towards ensuring that government is able to touch the lives of our fellow citizens with special needs, despite our limited resources.
While commending the governors of Lagos, Plateau and Nasarawa states for not only enacting disability laws but also establishing Disability Rights Commission in their states, the president insists that states yet to do so should take necessary action to enable government efforts have the desired impact at subnational levels.
Let me conclude by enjoining you as a team of the Commission to realize that your work forms a critical aspect in achieving the objective of our administration to removing 100 million Nigerians out of poverty. I am therefore looking forward to commissioning projects and programs of high impact to the disabled community in line with this vision.
The 8-member National Commission for Persons with Disabilities has Hussaini Hassan Kangiwa as chairman and James David Lalu as executive secretary. From the State House, Adamu Sambo, NTA News.
President Muhammadu Buhari has formally engaged Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu of Lagos State as the second wave of COVID-19 bites harder in the Center of Excellence. Now, their discussions also centered on, amongst others, efforts at rebuilding Lagos State after the mayhem and destruction of property that came in the wake of the last NSAS protest in the parts of the country. Again, State House correspondent Adam Sambo reports.
This is the second time in 2 months President Muhammadu Buhari will be engaging Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu on COVID-19 and the NSAS protest, both of which started from Lagos State. On COVID-19, for instance, now in its second wave, Lagos remains the epicenter, recording in just the last 2 days nearly 1,500 confirmed cases of the global pandemic, a situation the governor described as worrisome.
On COVID, it's actually a very serious case. You know, we've all said it, we're the second wave, and incidentally, the second wave seemed to be a lot more infectious than the first one. And we're seeing positive rates of about 25, sometimes 30%. You know, so that is actually very disturbing. And we've seen, unfortunately, the amount of fatality around the country, even in Lagos. And so one of the things that we've realized that a lot more people require, oxygen, attention. They need breathing, additional oxygen breathing. So we have started building what we call oxygen tent, oxygen facilities. We're building about 10 of such facilities. I think we've commissioned about 4 or 5, of them, and we're also building proper oxygen plants, additional 2 oxygen plants in the state, so that we can meet, the respiratory requirements. We understand the virus more than where we are 10 months ago or 8 months ago. So we know what the treatment should be.
On his efforts at rebuilding Lagos State after the devastation suffered in the wake of the NSAS protests, the governor said already owners of small businesses affected have started receiving grants and soft loans to enable them come back together as soon as possible, while proper study is underway on devastated infrastructure and transportation facilities for necessary action. Discussions also centered on collaborative efforts Lagos State can enjoy with the federal government as regards the various economic opportunities that abound in the state.
Like you all know, Lagos is the commercial nerve center of the country, and so we need to, very early in the year, start up on economic programs and in activities that can improve not only our foreign direct investment, but also make Lagos, an investor destination in the country. So there are a few things that are brought to his notice, a few projects that are brought to his notice, and how we can collaborate, with the federal government, and also a few future projects that we're praying that he comes around, and help us commissioning. He took very detailed notes. I was actually very, very, very happy. He took very detailed note and has given me assurances that some of the points I've put up with him, I will be seeing some call-up or some follow-up, either through the Chief of Staff or through some of the agencies of the federal government.
Governor Sanwo-Olu said the security situation in Lagos State was also analyzed and the best way forward charted towards making the nation's commercial nerve center a lot more business-friendly. From the State House, Adamu Sambu, NTA News.
All right, break is next for us. Please stay tuned.
I am there now. Are you sure this will work? Pastor, can't miss this guy's lecture. Just keep your phone on so I can listen.
Today we're going to be discussing sleep What is the medical term for sleepwalking?
Sonambulism.
Right.
Get free Intel to Intel calls and experience HD quality conversations every time. Live more.
All right, thanks for staying tuned. World Health Organization calls for more stringent measures over the new coronavirus variant, just as Ghanaian President Nana Akufo-Addo is sworn in for his second term. Let's join Joyce Ometu for the global update.
The World Health Organization says more needs to be done to deal with the alarming situation brought on by the new variant of coronavirus. Speaking at a press conference, the WHO's Regional Director for Europe, Hans Klug, called the current situation a tipping point in the course of the pandemic.
I want to urge countries to mitigate this burden by doing all they can to reduce transmission and increase vigilance to identify any new variants.
Meanwhile, Japanese Prime Minister has declared a 1-month state of emergency in Tokyo and surrounding areas, urging residents of the capital to avoid outings amid a record surge in COVID-19 infections. In the UK, the Oxford AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine is being rolled out to hundreds of GP-run vaccination sites in England, which is the biggest vaccination program in National Health Service history. The aim is to offer jabs to most care home residents by the end of January. In the meantime, South Africa's health ministry has said the country will get the first 1 million doses of coronavirus vaccine from the Serum Institute of India in January and an additional 500,000 doses in February. He added that priority will go to 1.25 million healthcare workers, both in public and private hospitals. In another development, the United States has again suffered a record daily death toll with 3,865 Americans dying in 24 hours. Now, this is the first time the toll has passed 3,800. The country has also reported 145,000 new cases. Worldwide, more than 87 million positive cases have been confirmed, with 1.8 million deaths. Of that number, Nigeria accounts for 94,369 after recording 1,664 new cases. In other news, Nana Akufo-Addo has been sworn in for a second term as Ghana's president a day after scuffles between rival politicians broke out in parliament. The president defeated his main rival, former President John Mahama, in December's tightly fought election. And that's where this segment ends. I am Joyce Ometu.
Well, for us in Nigeria, the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 has again urged the media as well as traditional, religious and community leaders to intensify risk communication and advocacy for vaccination towards curtailing the spread of COVID-19 in the country. As at Thursday's briefing, the PTF expressed concern over the increasing daily COVID-19 infections, urging Nigerians to continue to observe safety health protocols, adding that it is better to wear a face mask than being on a ventilator. The PTF said Nigeria's COVID-19 test positivity rate is now almost 10% and case fatality rate has increased to 3%.
If you do need a test, please do not buy a fake result because it's criminal. We're putting in place processes. We will let you know by next week. We will have a fixed date beyond which, if you need a test, you have to go through the travel portal.
And the PTF has directed private laboratories to immediately put in place measures to validate results and ensure that all passengers are registered on the travel portal before samples are being processed to stop this very unwholesome activity. The national coordinator would elaborate on this during the...
In terms of reinfection and herd immunity, there is no shadow of that, even from different vaccines that we've used in the past, that it is always better to use the vaccine. For COVID-19, it will take approximately 10 years for you to be able to achieve herd immunity. So you can imagine how many people will have died if you're going to rely on herd immunity.
Also said the federal government is embarrassed by Nigerians who present fake COVID-19 test certificates when traveling abroad. As the nation continues to battle the second wave of the coronavirus pandemic, medical experts in Lagos have warned Nigerians to protect themselves, where they say, unlike the first wave, the second is characterized with a newly mutated form, which is easily transmitted and more deadly. Hengino John Adams will tell us more.
The second wave of COVID-19, which is very ambitious, is the major concern in the country at the moment. That is why stakeholders in the health sector are working tirelessly to ensure that the virus is defeated. Professor Chris Bode is the medical director of Lagos University Teaching Hospital. He is one man who has seen firsthand the horrifying impact of COVID-19 on patients. Professor Bode and his team are worried about the recent spike in the number of COVID-19 cases in Lagos. They are raising awareness on the need for Nigerians to take prevention seriously to tame the raging virus.
So many people complain, I have malaria and I'm not feeling well. I treated malaria, it didn't go. Please, if you are feeling unwell, think COVID.
These medical experts advise that Nigerians should take the second wave more seriously as the newly mutated form of the virus is more dangerous.
Now, the numbers, not only that they are increasing, the severity is also, virtually everybody on our wards now, they are oxygen dependent. And that is really, unlike the first wave, where we have about 10-15% of the patient on oxygen.
Over the past 2 weeks or so, we have had cause to observe young people, some in their 20s, some in their 30s, who have actually died from COVID.
The warning and call to observe all COVID-19 protocols, the team explained, is not to alarm the populace, but to alert them, as a stitch in time saves 9. In Lagos, Hingino John Adams, NTA News.
Let's talk sports. Reactions trail Golden Eaglets Enyimba Games midweek. Kene Ima Abodike brings us sports update.
Football fans have urged Golden Eaglets of Nigeria to put behind their 1-0 defeat to Côte d'Ivoire in the WAFU B Zonal competition opener in Lomé, Togo on Wednesday and concentrate on claiming victory over Black Starlets of Ghana on Saturday as the only way to qualify from the group stage.
There are many factors that might come into play. The Ghana have rested for days. They didn't play yesterday, so they will have more time to have rested. But it's not over. Mathematically in football, 90 minutes is what decides on the field of play. So I think for the Golden Eaglets, let them put their acts together, correct their wrongs in this game.
Meanwhile, following Enyimba's ouster from the CAF Champions League, fans have renewed their call for the reinvigoration of the nation's domestic leagues as Nigeria beat bounce back on the continent.